All right, so we'll begin today's class. Good evening. As you're joining the class, again, I started after 9:10. And again, every time we do that, we pass the classes right 10 more minutes. I'm going to try to regulate that. It's just that, again, I try to go a little bit more if there are doubts. So I always use, right, like these extra minutes. But again, if it's going to cause some problems, we're going to see how we regulate that idea. The thing is that we are always going to have the hour that we should have, all right? Well, we have to practice. You told me that in the previous lesson, you wanted to be sure that this was clear, but in the sense of practicing, right? Using future time clauses because it can be applied to past as well. All right, as this is not the lesson for past, I just gave you some ideas. But as I was explaining, right? So in that class, let me put it like that. Everything has its own rules. Here for future, remember that the future time clause is going to be interesting because that clause, all right, it says here, right? We use the future in the independent clause and the present tense in the dependent clause. That's the time clause. So actually in the future time clause, we use, all right, a present. That's kind of weird. For example, right, here it will be, I will go to the bed or to bed when the movie ends. This is the future time clause, but it is in present, okay? But this present idea, of course, it's not present. It gives the idea of future. When in the future the movie ends, right? I'll go to bed. That's the idea that we don't say completely, but it is behind this logic, right? When will you go to bed? Also, the answer will be this, when the movie ends. So again, it's a reference of time. As it is specific, remember, this can be used in past, but once again, if you use it in past, then you can use it with all the tenses in past except for the present perfect. Why? Because remember that it's indefinite. And if it's indefinite, of course, you cannot say when, because when is definite. All right, remember that rule. Then you can create many different combinations. All right, you have again the present continuous or the past continuous with the simple past with simple past continuous with past continuous. Then you have very commonly past perfect with simple past, all right, or past perfect continuous with simple past. All right, and again, you have some limitations after these elements, after or in the clause, right, in the past clauses that you got. Remember that with most of them, you use the simple past in that element. Why? Because it's different. Sometimes you can use the past continuous with while, with as. Sometimes you can use the past perfect as with after. Okay, but again, those are like exceptions. With most of the other cases, you use the simple past. Okay, so again, that's what I wanted to mention now as part of the introduction for today's class. If you get to join, we're going to practice, but I'm going to take advantage also, perhaps you're not here, I'm going to be sure that these two lessons, I didn't want to cover them with you because we already talked about them, but I'm going to try to explain them briefly. All right, very briefly, so that we go to the main lesson for today, that is participial adjectives. Okay, so let's just take a quick look to these two lessons, number 9 and number 10. Okay, so Danitza, this is again one lesson that we already covered. Again, actually this is going to be mainly for you to check because this is not new and we shouldn't be using a lot of time. That's why I'm going to take advantage just to mention this briefly. Remember that we use infinitives in many situations, right? They can be the subject, they can be the object mainly. When they are the object, they can be the object of verbs, they can be the object after other people, and they can be, right, objects when you talk about purpose, like reason after certain things. Okay, so we know how to use them. We practice them with infinitives, but here we're just talking about purpose. Okay, it says today's lesson, right, will be focused on infinitives of purpose. It means that this structure will be used to talk about reasons, objectives, and goals, right, or goals. And we have, right, or sorry, that we have when we perform certain actions. Okay, we know that. This is right the most common example. I mentioned this right more than twice when we were covering this lesson. If you remember, right, I study English to travel to the US, for example, right? And this is very similar. She's been studying English to apply to a scholarship or the scholarship. To apply is the reason. Another way to say this would be she's been studying English because she wants to apply to scholarship. They go to the gym every weekend to be in shape. That's the reason. That's why they go to the gym every weekend. Right? Peter listens to podcasts in French to improve his listening skills. Mary and Laura have traveled to the US to study a master's degree. We went over the last lesson to remember what we did. Okay, so in all those cases, we have this structure. We have an idea, a statement, we have infinitive and the complement for that infinitive. And the infinitive in this case is the purpose of that statement. She doesn't eat fats. Why? To be on a diet. He studies hard. Why? To pass the tests. They'll buy a car to travel to La Paz. We stayed home to watch the movie. I went shopping to get some food. Now, if you want to be even more formal, and this is right advisable for tests, if you are in the TOEFL, for example, you can apply this and you can say in order to instead of only to. Okay, so same logic. I'm just going to read three of them. She doesn't eat fats in order to be on a diet. Same as to be on a diet, the same. They'll buy a car in order to travel to La Paz. And finally, I went shopping in order to get some food. Okay, so again, if you want to be formal, don't only use the infinitive, use in order to. Okay, now, if it's negative, of course, the purpose is negative. So you have to change the logic. Look, here we're saying the same thing. She doesn't eat fats. But in order to make it negative, we say in order not to be. Okay, in order not to be. You don't say in order to not be. No, that's very common. It's a very common mistake. Don't say to not. It's not to. Okay, in order not to be with overweight. He studies hard in order not to fail the test. They'll buy a car in order not to take a bus. We stayed home in order not to miss the movie. And I went to buy some food in order not to cook at home. All right, so again, if that is clear, then that's everything we have to know about infinitives of purpose. Okay, if it's informal or just a popular or common way to say it, just use infinitive, right? I do this to do that. If you want to be more formal, you say I do this in order to do that. If it's negative, I do this in order not to do that. All right, that's always going to be the logic. Now, we can also use this expression that is interesting, so as to. All right, that's the infinitive. So you can say, I went on holiday to relax. I went on holiday in order to relax. Or I went on holiday so as to relax. All right, so that's another way to say that. In order to is more formal, okay? It's more formal than so as to. But that's an alternative and it's not incorrect, okay? It's just a bit more formal. It's not that so as to is informal. It's just a bit less informal than in order to. All right, now, the same logic. If it's going to be negative, we know it's going to be not to. All right, I drank coffee so as not to fall asleep. He got up very quietly so as not to wake up the children. All right, same logic, that's it. Again, I'm just covering this very quickly because it's something that we got. Let me open this one. I also cover it quickly and I go to the mail list. All right, let's open it. I'll start. Okay, so let's then begin with this lesson. I'll just take a look also at something. Give me a second. Okay. I just want to see if you sent a message or something, or perhaps you were right from earlier and I was taking so long if that was the case. All right, sorry, I hope that was not the case. Let me just then double check. But yes, I'm connected. Let me check this message. 23 minutes ago. No, it was not you, right? It says here, I see the message when someone connects before all right, I connect. Okay, now I'm going to continue, all right? I just wanted to verify perhaps something happens, but I don't know. It's just that you had some things to do. You're going to be watching this class, all right? I'm again just showing these two lessons very quickly because this is something that we covered before. We know how to use these structures. I'm just going to spend a little more time in, let's say, the next lesson that is going to be participle or participle adjectives that I believe you also know, but I just want you to see a list of adjectives that you got over there. And I just want to clarify and to be sure that that's clear with an explanation I'm going to give. And we have the time, even we're going to cover one more. Because again, remember that we're not covering all the lessons. We're not covering everything. So as you're not here to practice with me, I'm going to take advantage to cover all these details so that you let me know if you got any questions about that. Okay, so this is also quick. Models of necessity. So, I'm going to go straight to the point, all right? Here, this is the correct order. Must is the strongest of them, right? I've got is the second one, and I have is the last one. This is the correct order. So I have to hand in my paper. That's necessity. I've got to hand in my paper. That's a stronger necessity. I must hand in my paper. That's the strongest necessity. All right, clear as that. Have to is the most common way to talk about necessity, and it can be used in any tense, right? In past, sorry, it's going to be number two in past over here. They, or she, or any subject, right? They had to park in a different place. That's past, simple past. Present, simple present, she has to show her ID to enter the building, right? This is infinitive also, in order to enter the building or so as to enter the building, all right? And future, John will have to renew his permit, all right? Well, in this case, it's going to be permit, so his permit, if he wants to enroll, all right? Now, I think this is not new. We know how to use how to, right, or have to, because it's at least I think the verb that you learn right in the first lessons of any English class, one of the four right basic verbs in English, and we know that this is for necessity. Okay, so that's it. This is not new. If it's negative, of course, it depends on the tense. If it's going to be present, do or does, right? In negative, it means don't or doesn't. If it's simple past, didn't. If it's present perfect, haven't or hasn't, right? If it's future, won't or is not going to, or, well, are not going to, any variations, and so on and so forth, right? So we also know that, and remember, it means that something is not necessary. This is not saying that this is a prohibition. This is not prohibited, all right? It's not the same as must in negative. Must in negative is prohibition, is something forbidden. But have to in negative is just something that you don't need to do it. Okay? It's okay if you do it, but you don't need it. You don't have to. So she doesn't have to show her ID to enter the building. It's not necessary. She can do it if she wants. It's not necessary and it's not prohibited, right? It's not like if she shows her ID, she's not going to join or she's not going to be able to ride or well to enter right that place. So again, the logic is very basic, is not necessary. All right, the same as with simple past. In and yes, if it's negative, it was not necessary. They didn't have to park in a different place. They could have done it in a different place. If they did it, or if they had done it, they wouldn't have been right any problems. But again, it was not necessary. And in future, well, will or be going to in negative, and that's it. Have got to, all right, the same as have to, is just a little bit stronger. All right. Instead of I have to go, you can say I have got to go or I've got to go. Or if you speak rapidly, you say I gotta go. Right. But it only shows a little bit of urgency. Okay. More than have to. Is it still good? Is it still correct? If you want to be formal, you have to write the complete idea. All right. I have got to or he has got to. That's going to be the main thing. And it's to use it in present. All right. That's have got to. All right. What I'm doing now is, and it's a you just joined, I'm giving a quick explanation of two lessons that I believe we don't need to practice because they are clear. We practiced before and they are very, very basic. I finished with one. That is this one. I'm going to show you now. With these infinitives of purpose, we already covered infinitives. That lesson that I finished, it was only about purpose. How to say, right? I do this to do that. All right. I study English to go to the US. Yeah, I showed a variation that is in order to be more formal. I study English in order to go to the US, or the last alternative that is so as to. That means the same. If you take a look, you're going to watch the first part of the lesson. It's the same. You say, I study English so as to go to the US. All right, that's the only thing I covered first. Now I'm covering these models, or more than models, not all of them are models, expressions for necessity. Okay, it's called models, but again, they are not models. Only one of them is a model, that is must. Well, these expressions have to, has, or have got to that I'm covering now with you. And the last one I'm going to show you must. It's just something that I'm showing you as a quick review because we know how to use them as necessary, right? I have to go to the bathroom. I've got to go to the bathroom, right? Necessity, okay? The clear necessity. And of course, must is stronger. Okay, that's the only thing I'm showing now. I'm going to finish with have got to. I'm going to cover must in 1 minute or less. And then we go to the main lesson for today that is going to be participial or participle adjectives. But I don't know if you have any problems at all or any ideas or comments about that, Danita, before I can continue with this and go to our main lesson. Let me know, please.
Hi, Jose Luis. I'm not in my desk, so I'm still out in my house. But I will be there in, I think, 5 minutes, please.
Yes, yes, go ahead. Be careful. All right. Go there and go home safe. I'm going to keep explaining. As when you get home, I'm going to be with the main lesson. Okay, so don't worry, Anissa. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so let's continue. I'm here. So, as I was saying, have got to is stronger than have to, right? It's just necessity. That's it. Oliver's got to print those documents for tomorrow. Mary's got to study harder to pass the exam. They have got to send their resume, right? If they want to apply, we've got to learn the notes on the staff, right? To read sheet music. So, have got. And finally, must. This is the strongest of the three elements, right? Of have to and have got to. Easy. If you have a real necessity or urgency, you have to use must. That's it. Oliver must bring those documents for tomorrow. That's a very strong necessity. That's practically an obligation and something that can have very negative consequences if it doesn't happen in that way. All right, that's the only thing that must is showing you to be stronger. I'm not going to read examples because they are the same as we have got to. They are only with must. And again, the difference is the degree of how strong this is in comparison to the last two. Okay? And if it's in negative, right, it shows prohibition. Remember that if you say have to negative, it's not prohibition. It's not something prohibited. It's not something forbidden. It's just something that you don't need to do. If you want, you do it. If you don't want, don't do it. But must not and cannot, they are prohibitions. It means that there's going to be a consequence if you do it. Right? You must not leave the class before the survey. If you leave it, right, that's going to be no it. They cannot speak loudly during the exam. If they do speak loudly, they are going to receive a punishment, right? Or I don't know, something will happen as a consequence of that action, right? The same for she must not hand in her assignment without showing her ID. It means that perhaps the assignment is not going to be accepted, right, or received. And Peter can stay here after their recess. It means again that it's not possible. If he does that, perhaps a negative consequence is going to follow that action. All right? And in questions, of course, you have many different ways to do it and tenses. I'm not going to mention this because we know how to formulate questions. If it's has to or have to, it depends on the tense, right? If it's present, past, future, it changes. If it's have got to, right, it's only going to be one possible way, but it's not as common. And if it's a must, again, with modals, only inversion. All right, so that's the second um, lesson that I'm covering quickly. Again, the reason is that these two lessons are something that we saw before in a certain way, and they are common ways of expressing or to express something that we know. We have this practice, but again, that's going to be it. All right. These two lessons, please, then, Danny, since you're getting home, perhaps you're still on your way home, are just again to refresh our memories for something that we practiced before or that you knew. And now we're going to go to the main, all right, lesson that is going to be this one over here, participial or participle adjectives. I'm going to begin. Please, you're going to let me know if you got home. I don't know if those 5 minutes passed, but you'll let me know. Okay, I'm going to start by giving the introduction. Okay, let's begin. Then I'm going to ask you something. Participial or participle adjectives, they are the same, right? Participial, participle. What is participle, right? It's a way in which you can form or conjugate a word, mainly verbs, okay? But in this case, we're talking about adjectives. But when we say, for example, the participial or participle, right, of something, okay, don't worry that it's a go, right? It's important that you get safe over there. Be careful with yourself, right? If you're using it on the street, just be careful, right? Try just to listen. You don't need to watch now, but you'll let me know, okay, when you get there. Then, what is participle, right? For example, the present participle is with ing, right? In the sentence, I am going home. Going is the participle, the present participle form of the verb go, right? And with ed or a change is going to be the past participle, for example, right? If it's regular, liked, right? She has liked that comment. Okay, so in that case, again, that's the past participle. So the participle is going to be that ending, that little conjugation that in this case applies to adjectives. Okay, the most common one is boring and bored. Both are participial or participle adjectives. Okay, so let's take a look at them. I'm going to start working this with you, right? It's yes, she's boring and she's bored. They are surprising and they are surprised. Okay, the four of them are using not verbs. Okay, be careful. You can use them as verbs, yes, but here we are using them as adjectives. Okay, not verbs. How do we know? To use them as verbs, they are going to be actions, and perhaps with ing you need an object. For example, she's boring someone. Okay, but again, that's not going to be count. Mainly here they are going to be adjectives, not they are going to be mainly. They have to be adjectives in this case, and they are just describing the person before the verb to be, right? So she's boring is describing her, and she's bored is describing her, right? I believe that we also covered this in a certain way, but let's remember that there is a big difference, right? Boring and bored are going to describe that person in two very different ways, right? In one of them, it is going to be the production of something, how this person, how she produces something, right, on someone else. And she's bored is the result, the effect that she feels, right? She feels this emotion because something else produced that on her. So in this case, she receives. Okay, so in she's boring, she gives something to someone. It means she produces something to someone. And in she is bored, she feels the results of something producing that thing on her. Okay, that has to be clear and it's going to be part of the introduction. It happens the same as they are surprised and unsurprised, right? Surprising is how they can produce this sensation, this emotion on other people, and they are surprised is the result, right? For what other people did to them. And again, that's what they feel in general. Now, the definition is going to be this one. All right, we're going to say actually more than the definition. I think they are just explaining. Mhm. Okay, no, yes, this is part of the definition. So these adjectives are as any other adjectives, but the main difference is that they are special because they can end in ed or ing, right? But again, they are not verbs, all right? They are adjectives. This is not the present continuous or this is not the passive voice because if you can misread that information here, this can be present continuous and this can be passive voice. All right. But again, in a very specific context, and sometimes it's not going to make sense. Right. I'm mentioning that because, again, some people believe that the difference is that ing is because she's boring now, right? And ed because she was bored right before. But no, it's just a way of stating these adjectives. And remember, in this case, ed is for feeling something and ing is for producing something. All right, that's important to remember and to know. So it says feeling ed. We usually use the past participle, okay, ending in ed to talk about how someone feels for living beings. So it can be for people, for animals, right? Not for objects. Very easily, you can read this, right? I was really bored during the flight. It means that you felt in that way. Okay, you felt bored. You don't say, I was really boring during the flight. Actually, you can also say that, but you say that if you want to say that you were producing that to other people, that the flight was not boring, that you were boring for other people, and the other people were bored because of you. Okay, that's the logic again. Okay, so here you feel that or you felt that in this example. She's interested in history, right? You don't say, actually, it's going to be incorrect if you say she's interested in history. No, She can be interesting for other people, right? You can say, I believe that she's interesting, or she's interesting for people that are like this and like that. Okay, so that's going to be interesting to produce that. Okay, to produce other people to say, wow, she's really interesting because you do interesting things. Okay, I'm going around that idea. But again, in this case, that's not the case. In this case, we have interested, and it's how she feels now. All right, and she's interested in what? In history. And John's frightened, right, of spiders. He's scared of spiders. Of course, he doesn't produce anything. He's just feeling something that the spiders produce on him. Okay, that's feeling with eating. I'm going to keep going. Then I hope that by the time I finish most of this, so that we can practice, you are already home so that we can again write some ideas. We have some minutes. Let's hope that we can get to practice at least with one detail. But let's keep going in the meantime. ing is the production of something or when you cause something, right? We usually use the present participle, ing, to talk about the person, thing, or situation which has caused the feeling, right? It was such a long, boring flight. So what is boring? The flight, because it produced, right, that on you. So I was bored. Okay, so if something is boring, you get bored. I read a really interesting book about history. All right, so I was interested. So, interesting book. This is described in the book. And why in this way? Because it produces people, it can produce, right, someone to feel something. In this case, I was interested because the book is interesting. And many people find spiders frightening. So the spiders are frightening because they cause this feeling. So they are frightened when they see spiders. All right, so that's the logic over here. ED for feelings, ing for the production of something, for causing something in a specific. Okay, that's important to understand. Now, if you follow this logic again, this is very easy, right? The movie is amazing, so I'm amazed. That girl is stunning, so I'm stunned. The class is boring, so I am bored. They are surprising, so we are surprised. Okay, that's the logic once again. If something is ing, I feel ed. Okay, something ing, I ed. Someone ing, someone eating. All right, again, that's the production, that's the cause and the effect. The cause and the effect is just as easy as that. And remember again, the difference then is big if you say ing or ed. The meaning, the idea that you convey when you say that is going to be pretty different. Okay, let's take that into account. So again, it's not the same to say I'm boring to I'm bored, right? It is very different. And again, here they are just giving you some, let's say, recommendations to pay attention to that difference. And the examples are, I was talking to such a boring guy at the party. He talked about himself for an hour. Okay, that's why this person believed, right? This person believed that the guy was boring because this person produced that on her, perhaps, or him, I don't know. Then and she's a really interesting woman. She's lived all over the world and speaks 5 languages. All right, again, then those characteristics make them, right, or make her in this case, sorry, interesting. And she produces people to be interested on them or in her in this case, or once again, because of her characteristics. And my maths teacher at school was really frightening. He was always shouting at the students. Again, it's because the teacher produced, right, that feeling on them. So again, that's, I believe, easy to get. We need to try to practice this in some examples. And again, as we are improving more and more our writing skills, I'm always going to ask you to write some paragraphs and ideas like that. Let me see if we have something else, just the comparatives that is going to be some in the extra elements and the list that I want you to see. Now, if you're still going home, I'm going to try to read some of these adjectives that we're going to use for the example. But let me know, please, Danichan, how much time do you think you can get home to practice just a little bit? Let me know, please, in the chat, or if you can turn on the mic. Yes, so I imagine that you're writing something, or even perhaps you're still on your way home. So I'm going to read. All right, that's why you cannot participate now. Let's read some of them. These are examples that if we don't get to practice here, then it's how we're going to try to cover or actually to work on examples once again at home. And we're going to check them, all right, the next class. But let's read some of them. The ones that we know, of course, actually all of them are very well known. All right, but I'm not going to read, of course, the most common ones that we mentioned before. Alarming, right? Something alarming can be what an alarming noise, because that noise produces people to feel alarmed. I was alarmed by the loud bang. All right, easy to get. Something is alarming, so you feel or you are alarmed. Amusing, right? The TV program is really amusing. Amused, right? He was amused to hear his little son singing. Yes, it's okay. I think I misread something. Let me start again, all right? I think something was off. He was amused to hear his little son singing in the back. Okay, now it's good. Again, close to entertained, right? To have some fun in a certain way because you enjoy something, right? That's something amusing that is going to produce you to be entertained. And that's positive in a certain way. Boring, we know. Confusing also is very common, right? And depressing. Okay, we got those. So let's keep going. In the next, we got frustrating, also very common. Interesting as well, we read that. Overwhelming, let's read this. I find London a bit overwhelming. It's so busy and noisy, right? Something that makes you feel that you're surrounded by noise, by lights, any type of stimuli that is going to affect, right, your perception or the way you see, right, around you. Sometimes when you are overwhelmed by things, you cannot think clearly, right? You get distracted easily. You are with a lot of confusion sometimes, right? So something overwhelming that can be a city, a very big city, can make you feel overwhelmed, right? Julie felt overwhelmed. She'd moved house, all right, got a new job and was learning to drive all at the same time. Okay, so because of all those activities, it was so overwhelming for her, and that's why she felt overwhelmed. Relaxing, that's easy to get, and satisfying, of course, right? Satisfying, satisfies. Then, shocking, let's read this. What a shocking crime. It's terrible. And shocked, of course, if something is shocking, you are shocked or you get shocked. I was shocked when my co-worker, all right, admitted stealing some money. Okay, surprising, surprised, easy, terrifying. And yes, we also got that terrifying, terrifying, and thrilling. Thrilling, right? What a thrilling music. It's some of the most beautiful music I've ever heard. And thrilled, right? That's like, I was thrilled to win first prize in the competition. Very excited, right, about something. To be very excited about something in specific. And tiring, okay? It's not as common as using tired, but of course we can also use tiring to describe something that produces you to be tired, right? My job is really tiring. I don't get home until 10 p.m. sometimes. And tired, if something is tiring, of course you can get tired. David's too tired to come to the cinema tonight. he's going to go to bed early. All right? That's again the rest of the list, and this is the source that I've used. Now, again, you will let me know, please, if you're going to be ready. Again, if at the end it's not going to be possible, we're going to be working on, um, let's say, this homework that will be again for Wednesday. All right, remember, we also had something to do for today, but we're going to check everything, including this new, well, let's call it like homework for Wednesday. But again, it's important to see if we can apply this without any difficulties. I believe that we got to see that it was all right, clear. But again, um, let's see, I'm going to cover one more thing, just the introduction for the next one. I'm not going to cover the next lesson completely, just introduction, all right, to finish the class. And again, at the end, if we don't have at least 5 minutes, because we can be until 9:05 or even 9:10. But let's see, let's cover the introduction and we'll see if you get to be here. Okay, so this is going to be the introduction for something that we have to practice on Wednesday. Okay, the present perfect continuous. Remember something that I mentioned in the last class that we got, Denise, when you were asking about the possibilities of using those time clauses, right, in past, for example. And if we have a rule in future, remember the rule is that if we don't have two simultaneous actions happening or that will be happening in the future, we mainly use future and present, right? And then something close to a rule happens in the past. Remember that in most of the cases, you're going to mention the simple past, right? But remember, as we use the simple past in the time clause, we cannot use the present perfect. Okay, I'm mentioning that because today's topic is present perfect continuous. We cannot use the present perfect if you use time clauses, because a time clause is part of an expression of time that is going to tell you when something happened. But remember, in the present perfect, we don't say when something happened. That's why, again, in the examples that I was giving you that in that class, I told you that you can have different conjugations, right? Or combinations in this case of tenses. Remember, right? Simple past and simple past when simple past, past continuous when simple past, right? Past perfect when simple past, okay? Or past perfect while a past perfect, or past perfect as past perfect, okay? And you can have some changes. For example, remember, if you have after, you can also have the past perfect in that time clause. So you have simple past after past perfect. Okay, but again, I'm just reviewing that again briefly to get to the present perfect. So why don't we use the present perfect over there? Not even the simple one, not even the continuous, because they are indefinite past tenses. Okay, so as they are indefinite, we don't know when, we don't say when. That's why, again, we don't use time clauses of that type with the present perfect. Okay, so we know about the present perfect simple, but again, today, as it is just introduction to finish today, and I'm going to read this to understand the differences. I read that book yesterday. I have read that book 3 times, and I have been reading that book for 2 days. Okay, so they have their specific way to be used. The first one, right, is something else. That's the simple past, and we know that the simple past is the definite tense in past, that we use it with definite time expressions, including past time clauses with when, after, before. Because if you analyze, those expressions give you the idea of when, even if you say after, before, as soon as, the minute, they tell you when, and that's why it has to be with something definite as the simple past. Okay, so I read the book or that book yesterday, that's clear. I have read that book 3 times. We use when, right? The present perfect, simple. When it's indefinite, when we don't know, when we don't want to say when something happens, all right? It can be to mention something that has a connection with the present, yes, but it can also be a finished action, but we don't know when, all right? That's the idea. It's not that this is unfinished. It can be unfinished, yes, and it can be finished, both of them, okay? So that's not a limitation for the present perfect. All right, but again, to the ability that it has to be or to get to a present time is that we call it the present perfect. And then I have been reading that book for 2 days. What's the difference again? I believe that we got to see this briefly, but the difference between number two and number three is that number two again can be used for finished actions, and actually it's very common to use it for finished actions, but not mentioning when, right? I've gone there before. I've done it, right? Many times. I've done it for many hours. So in those examples, we're talking about very likely, all right, actions that finished, but we don't know when. But if you say, I have been reading, I have been doing, I have been studying, I have been watching, I have been listening, all those examples are related to what? To something that has been happening. And this is even more, all right, more probable than number two to get to be in contact with the present and even with the future, right? Because we see the progression that started in the past and very likely it continues into the present. That's one of the main reasons, right, to use the present perfect continuous. Okay, so again, this is just the introduction. We're going to practice even more with also the thing that we are missing from the previous lesson, participial adjectives, and the thing that you had to also do for today. Okay, so I'm going to finish by mentioning those elements. Anitza, remember that we had something to do right during the weekend. For today, I'm going to check that on Wednesday. We have to check that together. For Wednesday also, please, Anitza, we're going to work on this. I hope that you are or you can take notes for that, if not now, later on. For participial adjectives, you have a list of adjectives, all right? You have to try to use these adjectives in the two different forms. In the, all right, let's say present participle form with ing, and in the past participle form with ed. And as you write the paragraphs, that's what you're going to do. Try to write at least one, all right, by yourself, and then the other one we can work, well, we can work on that one together on Wednesday. But you also have the alternative to work on the two paragraphs directly for Wednesday, and I just give you my feedback so that we go to the next part. Okay, so all in all, once again, we have two main things for Wednesday: the homework that was due today, and the thing that I'm telling you now, minimum one paragraph if you get to write the two paragraphs for Wednesday about anything using these participial or participle adjectives. That's going to be great. Okay, 1 to 2, if you may work on the two, we don't have to work anything else in class in terms of writing. And that's it. We checked that on Wednesday. We also actually we start and we cover this lesson, right? In fact, because I just gave the introduction, but we have to be sure that all those elements that you can see over there and that I mentioned over here are clear for you. Okay, I'm finishing then the class, and Anita, if you can write, please let me know if everything is clear. If you have a question, please write it. Okay, as you're writing, again, perhaps it was not possible to practice to see all the details, but I'm also going to share the poll with you. Okay, I have to do it every day because that's what management tells us. You have it over there. So once again, if you have any questions, please let me know in the chat. If not, let's fill in and fill out that poll, and that's going to be it for today. Okay, I'm going to be waiting just for a short response so that we can finish the class. So you're going to be watching the class then, all right? Danisa, I know that sometimes it's even dangerous to use your phone and anything. Okay, so please, any doubts, any questions, let me know about that. All right, on Wednesday. Remember the two things that we have to do, please. But again, to be sure that everything is clear, remember please to watch this class so that you're sure that everything is clear. Okay, mainly perhaps the beginning, right, of the class and the last part in which I'm mentioning these elements. Okay, great. There you go. See you then on Wednesday. Have a good night. And well, again, see you then